Okay, we have reached the 7 o'clock hour, so I think we are going to go ahead and get started. I'm very thankful to have each and every one of you here with us tonight. I welcome you, myself, Amy Elke from the Children and Family Services Training Center, along with our trainer for this evening, Deb DeWitz, Family Resource and Consultants. Wanted to officially thank you for tuning in. Many of you have tuned in for 6 weeks straight. Crazy to think, right? So this is our 6th in our series and kind of final in the EmergenFC. And so crazy enough, 6 weeks ago, we had no idea how many sessions we would even complete. And so here we are at our last official session. Many of you have been with us for all 6 weeks, so you kind of know the next little bit of housekeeping. But since we do have a number of folks who are kind of new and joining us even for the first time this evening, we're going to kind of go through some of those specifics. So to obtain training hours in regards to the live session, those of you who are here with us this evening on April 30th, of course, I will be tabulating the list of all who have been in attendance. And with that, I will be passing it on to all licensing agencies. So when we talk about all licensing agencies, of course, that would be our zones, PATH, LSS, YouthWorks, our tribal partners, kind of all of those licensing agencies for foster care will be receiving that list. Now, the other thing you can do is I will be emailing an evaluation. I'm guessing later this evening, actually, I'll probably get that email to you. And with that evaluation, at the end of the kind of completed eval, you can download a certificate, and with that, that can be kind of used for your records. So I know a number of folks have just kind of used that and screenshotted it off their phone, or downloaded just kind of the copy and saved on their computer as well. So you're welcome to email that to your licensing worker, but certainly not needed because I will be passing on that final list. So if you're here for the recorded, yeah, Deb.
If I could say one thing, when you are doing the evaluation this time, do not blame Amy. I was the one who said I would like a different evaluation this time, because we have not done this kind of training in this fashion before. So it's a little bit longer, and while it may be a little longer, it certainly isn't as long as it took us to get this created. So we do ask you to put a little time in and I don't mean take a half hour. That's not what I mean. I just mean fill out the numbers part, but probably more important than the numbers is jotting down a few things that you remember, and there's questions there that you can answer. Doesn't need to be complete sentences. It can just be a list. It can be bullets of, this, but just giving us feedback would be very, very helpful for how we proceed in the future with training. So thanks again for those of you who will be willing to do that evaluation and let us know how it went.
Most definitely. We do appreciate your feedback, and we take it and do work with it. So know that the feedback that you share this evening will be used, that's for sure. So, and when Deb's saying longer, it's not crazy long. I promise you that. I promise you that. It still won't take you very long. So those of you who have the evaluation, that would be great if you turned that in. For the recorded version, those of you who are tuning in kind of after the fact, of course, we still want to offer you those training credits. And so with that being said, we really encourage you to connect with your licensing worker to formulate that plan. So there's a number of different ways you can do that. Each agency is a little bit different of how they like to proceed with that. So I just encourage you to connect with your licensing worker. In regards to social work CEUs, that is a different downloadable certificate, in that notion that I will email it to you because it needs a little bit different information. So if you're asking for a social work CEU, I ask that you either comment in the chat box, which we'll talk about next, or email me. That would be great. So when we're looking at the chat box, that again is going to be kind of how we communicate with one another this evening. I know a number of you have already found that. You are welcome to list your names. If you're a 2-parent household, I really encourage you to maybe list both names, just so I can ensure that everyone who's watching this tonight does get on our attendee list. A number of you, as you kind of logged in, already have kind of both of your household members listed, so you don't need to by any means, but just to kind of clarify, I don't think it ever hurts. So If you want to comment in the chat box with who's in your household, that would be great. The other piece with that is you're welcome as we go through tonight's session to share comments, thoughts, questions, that sort of thing. We are in listen only mode. Right now we have about 160 households logged in this evening, so certainly over 200 people with us. And with that, we just aren't able to kind of have the option to unmute or turn other cameras on. We would love that because I know both me and Deb would love to engage at kind of a deeper level and connect that way. However, we just know it would become kind of a crazy mess if we tried to navigate that. So as of right now, we are all in listen only mode. So we really encourage you to kind of find that chat box and utilize it. Now, this is the last time I will be encouraging you guys to pause. So those of you who've been with us for the official six weeks, kind of know my spiel here. It's a little bit different this evening because we are in our last session. So, you know, I don't have to do my piece about, you know, this is a different type of training. Many of you know that, right? This series was a create as we go type of thing. And, you know, when we look at this training, I do appreciate everyone tuning in week after week by all means. And we'll kind of see what your feedback is to see how we move forward down the road. The second part of my pause always is, you know, this week has been no different than the past few weeks, that's for sure. You know, we received news earlier this week that the governor has decided to kind of slowly start to reopen. And so with that, I'm guessing we have some folks online here tonight who are very excited about that, and some folks who are very nervous about that. And we may have a number of folks who feel both sides of emotions, right? Both sides. So with that being said, it's maybe a different weight than we had last week. Maybe there's some additional hope in people's eyes. Maybe it's additional fear. I don't know. Nonetheless, the weight is still there, right? We're not back to our old version of normal. And so with that, I ask you to take a pause here before we get started. Take that deep breath. Really try to let go of some of those outside pressures, outside distractions. Easier said than done, right? Because you're home, you're still caregivers. Even if you have kids who can maybe tend to themselves a little bit, you still got to keep your eye on them, right? So again, I'm not saying, you know, zone out the rest of the world by any means, but tune out what distractions you can. Tonight, we're going to spend the next hour talking about a very important topic, a topic that I think almost as we come full circle is one of the most important pieces, because we can't do much of the work we spoke about the last few weeks if we're not taking care of ourselves. So with that being said, take that breath. We're going to tune in for the next hour to Deb, like the past few weeks. This is a recorded version of the training, so we can't pause and comment in response to questions or thoughts that way. However, we do encourage that dialogue through the chat box. And if you have comments, questions, thoughts that way, Deb has been wonderful of continuing that dialogue, even though we can't kind of stop the official session. So we know internet connections can be a messy thing right now across the board. So we wanted to ensure that we would be able to deliver the training. So we have recorded the next piece. So with that, I'm going to pass you off to recorded Deb, and we will go ahead and get this evening's training started.
Well, hi, this is Deb DeWitz, and here we are for our last session of EmergenFC. So just like we used to say, if you travel on an airplane, you should take emergency. Well, we've been trying to help you through this flight of the pandemic as foster parents. And tonight we're going to talk about something a little bit different, because we've been talking the whole time about the kids and how to take care of the kids. Tonight we're going to talk a little bit about self-care. How do you take care of yourself? And the information from tonight comes from a workshop that I've done for many years called I Don't Fold Underwear Anymore. Now, of course, for many of you, you're thinking, yeah, well, I never folded underwear. So maybe I should call it I don't fold any of my clothes anymore. But anyway, tonight we're going to be talking about how do you take care of yourself? How do you balance your work and your family life when they're all in the same place. And as we talked about over the last 5 weeks, when you are also trying to do, we aren't going to call it homeschooling because it's not homeschooling, distance learning. So really, we're going to talk about 3 things tonight in our last night as we talk about how to take care of yourself. Usually what people think is that I will just immediately start with, here's what you should do. But, you know, here's the thing about people giving other people advice. Most of the time when someone gives us advice, we not only don't take the advice and do what they say, we don't even bother to listen. So I'm not going to give you advice. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make some suggestions at the end. But before I do that, I think it's important that people recognize if they're not taking care of themselves. Because if you don't think it applies to you, then you won't think you need to worry about taking care of yourself because you say, oh, I'm fine. Matter of fact, that's very much the culture of North Dakota is when people say, how are you? Oh, I'm fine. You know, we could be dying, but we would say, oh, I'm fine. Because nobody wants to be seen as a whiner or a complainer. Nobody wants people to think that they're, well, like I said, whining or complaining. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about what would it feel like if you weren't taking care of yourself? Because too often when we're not taking care of ourselves, we think it's somebody else that has the problem. That's the first thing we're going to do. Second thing, and after we get to the end of that, somebody might say, yeah, okay, I see myself in some of those signs. So now what do I do? So you don't want me to tell you what to do. But that's not good enough because the fact of the matter is, if I said right now at the beginning, write down 5 things that you could do to take better care of yourself, you could all write down 5 things. You already know some things you should be doing to take better care of yourselves. So there's an old saying that we change not because we see the light, but because we feel the heat. Meaning, you know, usually we don't create a change unless we think it's important. So first I'm going to try to tell you what it'll feel like if you're not taking care of yourself. But the other thing is, if we don't understand why we don't take care of ourselves, then we're probably not going to change. So we're going to start by saying, this is what it feels like if your life is out of balance. And then we're going to talk about, yeah, what are some reasons we get out of balance? And then the last thing we're going to do is I'm going to say, well, here's some things that you might want to think about. All right, so we're going to talk about the ways that you might know you are not living your life in balance. And one of those things is that you will have physical aspects. And what will some of those physical aspects be? You'll be tired all the time. Not, I mean, tired like you've just been out working because the weather's been nice and you come in and you're fatigued because you've been working on your yard. I don't mean that kind of fatigue where you know why you're tired. I mean, you are as tired when you get 8 hours of sleep as when you get 5 hours of sleep. You're as tired if you do nothing that's physically draining as the days you do something that's a lot of physical work. When you feel tired all the time, that kind of fatigue usually is a sign you're not taking care of yourself. So when you think to yourself, oh, if I could just get a good night's sleep. Now, some of us are not sleeping all that well right now. I get that. But I'm talking about if you feel tired all the time, when you can't remember the last time you didn't feel tired. And well, maybe if you have a baby that's not a year old yet, but you know what I'm saying? So how often do you just feel like you wake up every day wishing the day was over? That kind of fatigue. We're always tired. Yeah, another sign that you should look for besides, am I feeling tired all the time? Is when your body is trying to tell you that you're not doing well. And everybody's body has a way that it tells you when you're not doing well. Some people get headaches. Some people get heartburn. Some people get rash. Some people get indigestion. So whatever it is that your body does when you are too stressed. Now, in America, we generally don't listen to our body because we have a whole set of commercials that come on every night on TV that say, shut up, right? Got a headache? Take some pills that tell it to shut up. You got a stomachache? Take some medication that makes it shut up. So we have a culture that says, don't listen to your body. But here's the deal, your body's always going to win. So if you don't listen to a little headache, well, a migraine will put you on the bed. If you don't listen to a small problem with your stomach, you know, you might listen to a heart attack. So when your body is not feeling good, instead of taking a pill of some kind that tells it to shut up. Now, that doesn't mean you should stop your heart medications. It doesn't mean you should stop your antidepressants. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the medications that don't really solve anything, but just tell pain to go away. Because your body gives you pain for a reason. And the reason is it's trying to say to you, hey, you over there, I'm talking to you. When I get a headache all the time, oftentimes it's because there's something wrong with my life, not with my head. So pay attention to whatever way your body is trying to tell you you're not okay. Pay attention to your tension. Like I said, maybe it's indigestion, maybe it's a headache, maybe it's a backache. Whatever it is that your body says, this is too much. Pay attention to that. And instead of trying to convince your body to shut up, ask yourself, is there some way that I can take better care of my body and I can have more control over my life? What's another way you can know if you're not taking care of yourself? Well, there will be emotional aspects. For instance, you might get some hostility toward the very people that you started out wanting to do foster care for. So, when you first got licensed, you were all excited. Oh, we got our license. We're going to get some kids. And you're all excited. But now when you start to find yourself thinking that, the kids are not grateful enough, that this is not what you expected. Now, again, it might not be what you expected. Most things aren't what we expect. Marriage often isn't what we thought it was going to be. Parenthood isn't what we thought it was going to be. A job isn't what we thought. So life is filled with things that turn out differently than we thought. But if you start to find yourself resenting the foster kids, maybe it's the foster kids. I mean, these are tough kids. But it might also be that you're not taking care of yourself. So ask yourself, am I less patient than I used to be? Sometimes part of that emotional aspect of not taking care of yourself is you find yourself looking at everybody else's life and thinking their life is better. Well, if I just had a different boss, if I just had a different spouse, if I just had a different foster kid, that somehow everybody else's life looks better. So not just about fostering, but when you find yourself looking around at everybody else's life and thinking their life is better, oftentimes it's really not about how their life is. It's about how we are looking at our own life. We have a saying back home, because I come from a farm, so we have some pretty kind of earthy sayings. Sometimes the only reason the grass looks greener on the other side of the fence is because the manure is thicker over there. So it's really easy to look at somebody else's spouse and think, well, if I just had that spouse, things would be easier. If I just had other kids, if I just had a different job, you look over there and the grass looks pretty green. But you know what? If you walk all the way to your neighbor's lawn, what you find is that there are vole holes and mole holes and snow mold in their lawn too, but you can't see it from a long ways away. It's really easy to look at everybody else's life and it looks green. But what made that grass green was probably a lot of manure that occurred in their life too. Now, I think I skipped one. No, there we go. Now, here's another one that is a sign that you're not taking care of yourself. And that is when you can't let go of feelings that are driving you crazy. So something happens at 10 in the morning and at 10 at night, you are still thinking, the next time my boss says that, the next time my spouse says that, the next time that happens to those kids. And you're not thinking, next time that happens, I'm going to try. I don't mean that kind of thinking, but the feelings that you had from a situation that happened earlier in the day and you're still hanging on to them. Like, here's the deal. I've never been in a job where they paid me enough that I should be working 24/7. All right? So we've got to be able to let go of feelings that are driving us crazy, whether that's about fostering or from our job or whatever it is. But when we are carting feelings around that we had way earlier in the day, we're still thinking, I should have said this. And, he's just a jerk or whatever it is. When you're driving around with all those feelings that are driving you crazy, it's time to get those feelings out of the car. Now, what are some intellectual aspects that will tell you that you are not living a balanced life? Is that you will lack creativity. The old saying is, if you do the same thing over and over and over and expect a different result, that's the definition of insanity. So you have to ask yourself, what are the things that are driving me crazy? And do I just keep doing the same thing over and over and over? because if what you were doing was going to work, it would work by now. So a lot of times we have ideas of what we think will work. You know, we've talked throughout this series about things that I tried this way and then voila, it worked better if I did it a different way. So sometimes we just, and here's how I always knew when I was living my life, when my life was not in balance, is that I would use words like always, never, nobody, everybody. How come nobody ever picks up around here? How come I always have to? How come everybody is, right? When you start lumping everybody together as if they're all the same, that's not about everybody being the same. It's about us not taking good enough care of ourselves, that we can see each situation differently, that we can see each person differently. What's another sign that we're not doing well is our inability to work with our partner. Now, the partner might be your spouse or a partner, a long-term partner. It might be your social work partner. It might, the guardian ad litem. But when you are finding a lot of fault with that person, it might now. Is it true that there are people that you don't work well with? Yeah, okay, that can happen. But when you start to think everybody's a jerk, when you start to feel like nobody gets it, that isn't always because everybody out there is a jerk and nobody gets it. Sometimes it's about how we're doing inside ourselves. So again, if you just see yourself with one of these things, probably not a big deal. But as I'm talking about these things, if you're feeling some of this, oh yeah, I really do feel like everybody around me is a jerk. Oh yeah, it really does seem like I do the same things over and over and over and nobody ever changes. And oh yeah, like I am tired all the time. And I don't just mean sleepy. I mean, I just feel like I just can't even get out of bed. If you're feeling lots of these things, it might be a sign that you haven't been taking care of yourself. Now, negative attitude, as you can see, those are moldy strawberries. The thing about a negative attitude is that it spreads, just like mold on strawberries. So if you're around people who have a negative attitude, that negative attitude will spread to you. So even if you're taking care of yourself, if you're working with a spouse who's not doing good self-care, then every time you try to problem solve and you say, well, why don't we try this? That'll never work. Or maybe you are working with a social worker who has a negative attitude. And no matter what you say, that'll never work, right? And here's the thing is that when we're the ones who are saying, well, that's not going to work, we don't think that's a negative attitude. We think that is a legitimate assessment of the impossibility of the situation. But you can hear a negative attitude in somebody else because no matter what you suggest, they find fault with it. So if you are negative Nettie or negative Nels, nobody's Nels anymore. People from my generation were, right? You got to ask yourself, am I not taking care of myself, and is it coming out as negativity? So remember, that's part one that I said we're going to talk about. So if you saw yourself in this, am I feeling negative? Have I lost my creativity? Do I tend to just respond the same way no matter what happens? I see parents who, no matter what happens, they take away, they ground the kid. No matter what happens, they take away video games. No matter what happens. It's like they're doing the same thing over and over and over. If it were really working, we wouldn't have to be doing that same thing. Now, not that we don't have to do repetitive parenting, we do. But there should be it should work for a while, right? All right, so now remember what I said? It's not enough to say, yeah, I know I'm not taking really good care of myself right now. I mean, it's a really tough time to take care of myself. I'm working from home. I'm trying to do distance learning with the kids. I've got maybe my own kids and foster kids. We're worried about money. We're worried about everything. So I can't take care of myself right now. And here's what people usually say, well, I will as soon as things calm down. But I've been doing this workshop for, man, this is embarrassing to say, 40 years. 40 years. And I've been hearing from people for 40 years. Well, you know, when things slow down, after my grandmother's 87th birthday party, after we get the remodeling done, well, as soon as we get the crop in, there is always going to be something that is going to say, yeah, I can't do it now. And right now in the pandemic, boy, I tell you what, everybody is saying, oh yeah, I have a reason that I can't do anything. But the more out of control our life feels, the more we need to find parts of our life that we can control. So in this part, we're going to look at that. Well, I would if I could, except, yeah, maybe you wouldn't. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at the reasons that we don't take very good care of ourselves, specifically in this region, but in this country as well. For one thing, you are a special group of people. If I fired you all and I replaced you all with accountants, now I might have some accountants who are foster parents, but if I replaced you all with somebody who didn't like to be around people, they probably would take better care of themselves. I mean, I certainly know people who, you know, they would say, well, what do you do as a social worker? And I'd say, well, you know, we work with people who are really struggling, you know, it's like might have someone who has a mental health problem and they're thinking of suicide. And there are people who say, well, just let them kill themselves then, you know, then it'll be done. Yeah, okay, well, that's not who you are. You are the people who care about other people. Your hearts are other-centered. You care what happens to other people. And being an other-centered person means that you tend to put other people before yourself. Now, that's a great characteristic for a foster parent. That's a wonderful thing in a foster parent. But it also means that if you never take care of yourself, guess what's going to happen? You know, we expect 2-year-olds to understand the concept of limited mechanical energy. Right? So when you had children that were 2 years old or whatever age where you're, certainly you didn't buy it, but some aunt or uncle bought them that kind of toy that makes all that noise, right? And they would walk away and leave it making noise. And what would you say to them when they walked away from the toy? Turn that thing off. Don't forget to shut it off, right? Why? Why? To save on the battery. Why? Because the battery doesn't last forever. Right? We expect a 2-year-old child to learn the concept of limited mechanical energy. Turn it off when you're done, because otherwise the battery will burn out. If we expect 2-year-olds to be able to understand that concept, don't we also have to understand that we ourselves are a limited mechanical system? We are a limited mechanical system. There is only so much energy. There's only so much we can do. And in the same way that we have to take good care of our tools, we have to take good care of our machines, we have to take good care of our food, we have to take good care of ourselves. And in this caring for other people, if we don't take care of ourselves, that's going to be a problem. But let me tell you what I learned when I traveled to another country. When I was in my early 20s, I went on a cultural exchange to Colombia, South America. And it was interesting because I was raised Catholic. And in South America, the majority of people in Colombia, the country of Colombia, are Catholic. So I thought, well, that's one thing I will have in common, is I understand the culture. So it was really interesting when I went to the church there and listened to the sermons, because I thought, wait, I thought that the priest told me that Catholics everywhere have the same beliefs, right? The Bible has basically the same beliefs. But that is not what it sounded like when I went to services there. So I came back and I said, well, what is this? It didn't sound the same at all. It didn't sound the same at all. And my English teacher used to say, you're putting the emphasis on the wrong syllable. And it was then that I learned that religions actually are interpreted differently through culture. So the same religion in this country, the same words out of the Bible will be interpreted differently than there. For instance, in my North Dakota culture where I grew up, I heard lots about he who humbles himself shall be exalted and he who exalts himself shall be humbled. So don't ever think good of yourself, right? So, you've got to be modest. You've got to not look at, what you do well. I learned a lot about it's better to give than to receive. Oh yeah, give, 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 give. Oh boy, and I tell you what, women of my generation, that was pounded into us, that we had to give and give and give and give and give. So we had this idea of, who is the hero of the Christian religions? Well, Jesus, who gave his life. And, I met somebody once who said, Deb, are you trying to one-up Jesus? Because a lot of times it seems like you're crawling up on the cross saying, oh, I'll do it. Somebody has to do it. Because I didn't know how to take care of myself. I didn't know how to say no. Because I kept thinking it's better to give than to receive. But here's the thing. If it's better to give than to receive, then don't we have a responsibility to receive 50% of the time so that other people have the gift of being able to give to us? Think about that for a minute. If it's better to give than to receive, and you're always the giver, that means you are not allowing people to give to you. You are not on the receiving end. And that's part of what we're supposed to do. What I found interesting in South America, where I'd been given these strong messages about, you need to humble yourself and you need to give and give and give, is that the strongest thing they took out of that religion was love your neighbor as yourself. The greatest of these is love, and love your neighbor as yourself. Not love your neighbor better than yourself. Not, we're having company, so we're going to clean the house. Not, we're having company, so we're going to make a really fancy meal. Not, I'm going to make this nice cake and give it away. How many of you, right, came out and went, oh, yeah, that smells really good. Don't take that. We're taking that to the church. That's not for you. That's for the school, right? So a lot of times, many of us were raised with the idea that we're supposed to love our neighbor better than ourselves. We treat strangers better than we treat our own families in this country. We almost never have to send somebody out to a work site to stop people from hitting each other or yelling at each other. People don't hit each other and yell at each other at work. We do that in our homes in this country. We treat people that are not close to us, people we don't love, better than some people treat their own families. And what I learned in South America, in the same religion that I was raised in, is that you could put the emphasis on a different part of the syllable. That in South America, if somebody didn't want to do something, they said no. And in this country, when people are doing too much and I say, well, have you thought about maybe you need to cut down? Maybe you need to say no. Well, I can't do that. Why not? What would people think? And yet we try to tell our teenage daughters to say no, right? If some guy wants to be sexual with them, we tell our sons to say no. If somebody wants them to take drugs, yeah, they should say no. They shouldn't worry about other people might not like them, right? Here's the thing. If you won't take care of yourself for yourself, take care of yourself to show your children that it's okay to say no. It's okay to say no. Sometimes people say, what if everybody said no? Then where would we be? You know what I found? When I finally learned how to say no, because I did have to learn that in my career. I never lasted in social work if I didn't learn how to say no. When I finally learned how to say no, you know what I realized? I was saying yes to the wrong things. I was saying yes to things I thought I had to say yes to, or that I should say yes to, or wanted people to like me, or what if nobody else will do it? And the fact of the matter is, when I started saying no to things I didn't want to do, I said more yeses. Because the things that I wanted to do energized me. So they would call me and they would say, oh, Mrs. DeWitt, so we need you to teach Sunday school, right? It's like, that's just not a good idea. I'm not good at that. So I said no. So but I do like music. So I said, well, why don't I be the music teacher for Sunday school? So people would say, oh, we need you to do this. No, I don't like to bake. I'm not going to bring bars for the funeral. But how about if I would play the organ for the funeral? So instead of thinking of it as, well, if everybody said no, where would you be? What if we said no to what we didn't want to do and said yes to the things that we like to do? So you got to pay attention to, why am I thinking I have to do too much if I'm doing too much? And have I been led to believe that I'm only a good person if I'm constantly humbling myself, if I'm always giving, and if I treat my neighbor better than I treat myself? I just love the saying, the only person who ever got their work done by Friday was Robinson Crusoe. Now, if you never read the Robinson Crusoe book, you don't know that Friday was his right-hand man. So that's how he got his work done by Friday. All right, what's the other part? The reason we don't take care of ourselves, because we want to help. Remember that part that I said about we're other-centered? We look to other people first. We want to help. We are the kind of people that when we see a problem, we want to make it right. And that is important, and we need you to do that. But we've got to be sure we're helping ourselves. We've got to be sure that we're helping ourselves. We're doing things that we need to do. Because, I used to say, some of the best social workers I ever knew burned out and quit. Matter of fact, I said that enough times that I finally started thinking, what does that mean about me? I mean, if I didn't quit, does that mean I'm not one of the better social workers? Yeah, whatever. But you got to take care of yourself. You have to know what you can do and can't do. And let me tell you, I know that social workers call you in desperate straits trying to convince you to take kids. And sometimes you really don't think you should, but you do it anyway. But if you do that too many times and you burn out, then you won't do this anymore. And then you help no kids. So, you got to think of fostering not like a sprint. What we hope is that you think of fostering as a marathon. And some of you have been doing this for decades. You get fostering as a marathon, not as, I'm going to get talked into doing things that I shouldn't do, but I'm going to do what I know I can do and I can do well. Some people like teenagers. That's who they foster. Some people like babies. That's who they foster. But sometimes when we let ourselves get talked into things that are not our strong suit, we end up not taking care of ourselves because we're trying to help somebody else. Because remember, when you die, the inbox is not going to be empty, right? I mean, you can foster as many kids as you can foster, but there will always be children who need people. So you've got to take care of yourself. To be part of this ongoing solution, you've got to take care of yourself. Now, another thing is, you are taking care of kids that sometimes the school doesn't like. They come from families that the community doesn't like. Oftentimes you hear some pretty negative things. I wouldn't take in somebody else's kids. A kid did that in my house. Blah, blah, blah. So a lot of times we don't get a lot of community support. I have a friend who was a foster parent. She would foster and adopt special needs kids. And she said, people come up to her all the time. I don't know how you do what you do. You're amazing. And she'd say, you want to know how I do what I do? Come over Saturday at 1:00. I could use a hand. Wow. And she said when she first started doing it, it started because she was just so frustrated at how many people kept putting her up on this pedestal as if somehow she had superhuman power or superhuman patience or superhuman energy. And so when they say, I don't know how you do it, she finally one day just in frustration said, you want to know how I do it? Come over Saturday, 1:00. You can see how I do it. But what she found is that when she would say that, some people would say, oh, well, do you need some help? Yeah. And I get that you can't do that right now, but she found that she wasn't asking for help, that there were people who were willing to help her, members of the community who were willing to help her, family members, relatives who were willing to help her, but she hadn't been asking. So if you get this feeling sometimes, doing a good job as a foster parent is a little like wetting your pants in a dark suit. Gives you a nice warm feeling, but nobody notices. Maybe that's because you're not letting people help you. This one was huge for me, so I don't know if it'll be as huge for you, but our American upbringing has set us all up for failure. The American grading system, and now they're talking about going to different grading systems. It won't be A, B, C, D, it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or whatever, but doesn't really matter what you call it. When we line people up and say, this is the top and this is the bottom, people know which is the top and which is the bottom, whether it's a grade or a number. And in our system, you all know A is excellent, B is above average, C is average, D is below average, and F is failure. Now, in most settings, in most elementary schools, for instance, an F is 75% or less. Now, I got to tell you, if I could remember 75% of what I learned in my life, I would think I was doing really good. I would think I was above average. I'd think that was pretty excellent. I certainly forgot 75% of what I learned in my life. So when you think about it that way, you go, well, wait a minute. We're failing if we're getting 75% of what we're supposed to know? Wow, that's a pretty high standard. Now, that standard is held over many, many places in the developed world, but there's an even bigger problem than the 75% problem. And it is that this isn't really the American grading system. This is the American grading system. In America, if people get an A, they think, oh, I'm okay. But if they get a B, they think, oh, no, I failed. If they get a C, they think they failed. If they get a D, they think they failed. It's not just an F that is failure in this country. And I know this because I taught at universities for 2 decades. And not everybody gets an A, right? An A, according to the American grading system, should be excellent, like an extraordinary understanding of the material. You got 100% of the concepts. Well, none of us can get 100% of anything. So an A should be really rare. Where should we actually be? Well, most of us should fall right here. Because if you look at what a C is average. And guess what? You and I are all exceedingly average. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not special, because some of you are excellent at singing, or you're excellent at cooking, or you're excellent with a computer, or you're excellent as a farmer. But you might not dance very well at all. You might not be really good at communicating with your spouse. You might not be very good at figuring out your taxes. Meaning that everybody has strengths, areas that are their strong suits, things that they do well almost without trying. So let's take Deb DeWitt's. I got the gift of gab. I didn't have to take any speech classes. I mean, I did take speech classes, but I was good with the gift of gab before I ever took a speech class. It's just something that was a talent, was a gift I was given. But I tell you what, I am so disorganized. I have never been well organized. Well, I'm ADHD, so that doesn't help any, right? So in my life as a professor, and in my life as a social worker, certainly almost all of us have some kind of an evaluation that we get if we work for somebody else. And in that evaluation, they give us 1 through 10 or 1 through 5 or A through whatever. And, most of the time, if we don't get the top score, we think, well, how come I didn't get the top score? Because you can't be good at everything. Nobody's good at everything. But in this country, we think if we didn't get the top score, we failed. So I'd have students, or I would send their paper back and they would have a B or a C. And what is a B? A B means, hey, you are above average. You're better than most people. But when people would get a B, they would say, how come I got a B on this paper? And I would say, because it was a really good paper. They said, well, how come I didn't get an A? Because it wasn't an excellent paper. It was really good, but it wasn't excellent. And the fact of the matter is, most of us are C's. Now, we're not C's in everything, but we average a C because we're excellent in parts of our life, and we're not so good at other parts of our life. And that's human. That's average. So, I'm not a good cook. I'm just not. So, I like company. So, how do I work that out? Because people's lives are busy. Well, one way to have company is to have people over to eat. But when I try to cook on my own, it's not always so good. So I developed this habit of having Prego spaghetti, right? Spaghetti with Prego spaghetti sauce on it. And you can't believe how many people ask me for my recipe, right? People say, you don't really feed your guests Prego spaghetti sauce. Yeah, because Prego tastes like crap, right? So it's like I can be an excellent hostess, even though I'm a pretty awful cook. But how can I do that? First, I have to realize that just because I'm not an A in everything doesn't mean I've failed. Just because my house isn't always clean doesn't mean I've failed. Just because my students say she's disorganized, that doesn't mean I've failed. If they say, I really learned a lot from her, but she's disorganized, well, okay, that's an A and an F. That's a C, good enough. I'm average, I'm a human being. But how many of us are trying to get A's all over in our lives? We're trying too hard to get too many A's and not accepting that it's okay to embrace the areas where we are good at something, but also to accept the places where we're not. Now, another thing is that some of us have some personal messages that say to us, you cannot take care of yourself. And those personal messages can come from the family in which we grew up. It can come from the culture in which we grew up. I shared with you some things about, being 68 years old, the culture at the time I was growing up and how it saw women. I got a lot of personal messages about what I could and couldn't do, who I could or couldn't be. And I think I shared that I grew up in a rural area, in a farm family. And in a rural farm family, boys were very valued. Girls were not so valued. So I got a lot of personal messages about, that the things that men do are important, the things that women do were not important. So off I go into the world of work, and it just seemed like no matter what I did, it didn't seem like anyone thought it was important. So my personal message was, no matter what you do, it will never matter. And I had to get to a place where I understood that that was my internal tape. That was my internal talk. And if you have some internal talk that says you have to do too much in order to feel good about yourself, or no matter what you do, it'll never be enough, or you're not good enough, or you've got to help others, or else you're not doing enough. I mean, you got to look at, is there something that gets in my way? When I know I need to stop and take care of myself and I just can't, what am I trying to prove? Who am I trying to please? What's the message that I have about myself that keeps me from taking care of myself? Okay, now part 3. This is where you get to make your own chore chart, right? Because we do all these things with our kids. We set goals for our kids. By this time you have to do that or else this is going to happen. They have IEPs, they have chore charts. Our kids have all kinds of expectations of how they have to make their lives work. And we have all kinds of expectations. Now, normally what I do when I do this workshop, well, first off, normally when I do it, it's certainly more than an hour long. So I'm rushing through this. But I make everybody write down some promises to themselves about what they're going to do over the next year to make their lives better. And then I send it out to them a year later. They don't know I'm going to do that, but I have them write their address on an envelope and I send it out. But since I don't have your addresses, I can't do that. But I would like you to take out a sheet of paper. And I'd like you to write down some things that you would like to do over the next year to take better care of yourself. And I know, it's a pandemic, I can't. Everything's so busy, I can't. But you know what? Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. Because if you think you can't, you won't even try. And then you won't. But if you think you can, you will try. And most of the things we try, we can at least have small success. So let's just take something really simple. Like, oh, I'm not eating like I should. I know I don't eat the 5 fruits and vegetables a day. Okay, so you don't say to yourself, well, I'm going to eat 5 fruits and vegetables a day and I'm going to lose 50 pounds. No, you're not. You can't lose 50 pounds. You can lose 1 pound 50 times, right? But you can't lose 50 pounds. You can only lose 1 at a time. So if you say, well, I really should be eating better, then the next time you go to the store, you just buy baby carrots or whatever you could use as a snack. I just started saying when I have snacks, it's going to be fruits or vegetables. So you can do just small things, because if we start with small things and these promises we make to ourselves, we build on success. It's the same thing when we're talking about with these kids. You can't set a great big goal. You have to set a small goal, you partialize it, and you make some promises to yourself. Now, I already talked about learning to say no. I talked about the fact that we don't say no because we're scared of what people will think, or they won't like us, or then who's going to do it. I remember when I started a 4-H club years ago and did it for, I don't know how many years, but X number of years, 5 years, whatever. And then we were moving. And so I was trying to find somebody who would take over the 4-H club. And of course, nobody wants to step up because their kids have been coming, and it's been kind of nice that I was doing the work. And so nobody was stepping up. And I said, okay, well, we'll just fold the club then. Nobody's like, no, we can't do that. Yeah, we can. Because if it's not important enough for somebody to step up and take it over, maybe it's met its purpose. And if we stop now, the kids who've learned whatever they've learned, they'll carry that with them for their lives. And someday somebody will say, we should get these kids started to learn blah, 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 blah. And they'll start another club. But when we think we can't say no, that nothing can ever stop, then we get into this habit of always doing the same thing, even when it doesn't make any sense anymore. One thing that I have seen through this coronavirus is a lot of people saying, maybe we shouldn't go back to normal. Americans work more hours a week than in any other country in the developed world. Now, when I say in the developed world, it's because we know that subsistence farmers in Africa may have to work more hours during the growing season. But I was in Africa, and when it's not the growing season, they take time for their families. But we as Americans have now surpassed the Japanese, who have long been seen to be a culture that did nothing but work. We work more hours a week because we can't say no. We can't say no. But really, what I found is that it isn't that difficult. You just place your tongue on the roof of your mouth and you make the sound. When I have everybody in the room, I make them do that sound. And then you place your lips in a circle, you make the oh sound. And then you put them together, just like on 3, 2, 1 contact in the old days. No! And when you learn to say no to the things that because usually we know if we should say yes or no, but we get talked into things. And when you say no to the things you should say no to, you will have more energy to say yes to the things that you're good at. But the problem is we get caught up in thinking it's urgent. So The greatest danger in life is allowing the urgent to crowd out the important. So my kids would come home and say, oh, I need a Halloween costume for school in 2 days. And that was back in the day where everybody sewed Halloween costumes. So am I going to stay up all night sewing Halloween costumes? At some point I learned that's urgent, but it wasn't important. You know, there are so many things that come up, and what we have to do is stop. Every time we start these sessions, Amy says, we're going to stop, take a breath, take a break. Why does she do that? Because that is such an important part of what all of us need to be doing every day, multiple times throughout the day. I have a friend who sets his timer. So every hour on the hour, his timer goes off. Just as a reminder to him, take a break, get up and walk around, think about something besides whatever he's been working on. Recognizing that we too often focus on what's urgent. So part of what we have to do is figure out, well, what is important? What is important? Because you know what? If I just go by my lists and think, oh, I've got to get this done, I've got to get that done, I've got to get this done, got to get that done. And what they used to do is they have all these time management seminars. And this is the kind of stuff they would teach us. Now make sure that you plan your day. Make sure that you concentrate on the task at hand. Make sure that you take breaks frequently. I just was talking about that. Avoid clutter in the workplace. Don't be a perfectionist, blah, 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 right? And then they would say things like, make a circle, make a list, circle the most important things on your list. And be, you know, here's the problem. I don't care how well you manage your time. Remember what I said? When you die, your inbox will not be empty. There will never come a time when you don't have stuff to do on your list. So I think we have to do something different from time management. I call it life management. Like I make lists. Yeah, I make lists all the time. But then I frequently look at the list and I say, yeah, okay, I think I have to do that, but do I really? Now, I said that when I do this workshop, I call it I don't fold underwear. And why do I call it that? Because one day I was folding underwear and my daughter came running in, Mommy, come inside, you have to see this. She was all excited. Okay, I'll be right there. And I just finished folding the underwear. Just wanted to have something done on my list. Laundry done. And then I run outside and she goes, never mind. Now, I don't remember what it was she wanted to show me because I didn't get to see it. Maybe it was a bird that flew away. I don't know, but I will never forget the look on her face. How sad she was that she didn't get to share that very special moment with me. And I walked back in and I thought, what the heck were you doing, Deb? Like the underwear inspector is not going to be coming around until at least August. I mean, there is no underwear inspector. And I just thought, why did I prioritize folding underwear over my daughter? And so I just stopped folding underwear. And it's funny, people used to say, so you what, just stick it in the drawer, just all mushed up like that? Yeah. I said, well, isn't it wrinkled when you put it on? Honey, if it's still wrinkled when you get it on, you're buying it too big. You know what I'm saying? But I don't mean you just stop folding underwear. I mean, you ask yourself, what am I doing that doesn't matter? Folding underwear, didn't matter. Matching socks, didn't matter. Dusting, kind of realized that didn't matter. Didn't matter. Remember when I said I have lots of company? We used to have a big party at Christmas time. 150 people would come to the party. And we had a black grand piano. If you don't dust, as you can imagine, it gets quite a bit of dust built up on it. And somebody would go like this over the grand piano and go, DeWitt's, pretty dusty. And I'd say, yeah, well, if you're going to waste all that motion, why didn't you put a dust mitt on it? And then I'd say, but look who's having the party. Right? They couldn't have a party because they thought their house was never clean enough and they didn't cook good enough and all those things. But that's not what I wanted to prioritize in my life. And when I had little kids, pajamas, here's the deal, right? You fight to get them to take a bath. And then you fight to get them in their pajamas. And then you fight to get them to bed. And then you fight to get them up in the morning. And then you fight to get them in clothes. And I thought, this is way more work than I'm willing to do. So after their little tubby, I put them in their clothes for the next day. Went to bed with their clothes on. The next morning, they were ready to go. Worst case scenario, grab some Cheerios in a plastic, snack bag on the way to childcare. And all of a sudden, it was like magic. It didn't solve every problem in our lives, but boy, I tell you what, it solved 2 fights a day. Getting them into their pajamas, because to them that meant they had to go to bed, and getting them in their clothes. So I just looked at my life and I said, what are the things I'm doing that don't make any sense? Thinking that I had to clean every week. Again, when I grew up on a farm, yeah, things got really dirty. How dirty do things get, right? I see my neighbors out there straightening the grass along the sidewalk, spending the whole day doing that. And I'm like, really? How often does grass totally overtake a suburban sidewalk? I'm not doing that, right? I told you I quit cooking fancy meals. I stopped taking myself so seriously. Early on, somebody said I was quirky and somebody else said I was, I don't remember what. But anyway, it's like, yeah, I don't take myself so seriously. It's like, fine, whatever. People are still tuning in. It's good enough. I'm not the best presenter in the world, but it's good enough. And Amy and I had the courage to just say, let's do it. And let's do it when they need it. Let's not wait and develop the perfect curriculum and develop a perfect studio. Let's not take ourselves so seriously. Let's just get out there and try to help. So do I make lists? I make lists all the time. And then I dump stuff. Like spring cleaning, dumped that decades ago. I dumped Christmas baking. Used to be, you had to bake before Christmas. It's like, and then it was this stressful thing. Holidays aren't stressful for me now. Whatever holiday thing we're having, everybody brings something to eat. Right? I don't think, I got to buy this gift. I don't got to do anything. If I feel like I want to give that person a gift, I give that person a gift. Right? I make a list and then I say, would I really have to do this? Right? On my life management list, it says, have people over or go out. Because for me as an extrovert, that is a really important part of my life. For some of you, what you need to do is create downtime, because that's what you need to do to manage your life. My introvert friends, they need to create alone time, downtime. I have to laugh often, I have to laugh hard. So on my list of things I had to do, this was my list of 10 things I said I was going to do to make my life better. So what are you writing on your list of things you want to do to make your life better? One of the things that I had to learn to do was to give kids responsibility, right? And my grandkids are 3 and 5. And so if I happen to be there on laundry day, I say, get over here and help fold clothes. Yeah, well, you're going to fold your clothes, right? They can, other people have their plates up in a cupboard. I had mine down, because from the time they were little kids, preschool kids, they set the table, they put on the silverware, they got their own water. You know what I'm saying? So in what ways can you have the kids be responsible? Don't be afraid of going slowly. Just be afraid of standing still. Remember what I said? So as you think about things that you could do to make your life better, and I said when I started this, you all know things you could do to make your life better. You could get more sleep, you could eat healthier, you could get some exercise, you could la, 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 la. But hopefully beyond those very obvious things, you could think differently about having too many expectations of yourself. And then just give yourself permission to give up something, right? Give yourself permission for things not to be so perfect. Give yourself permission not to get an A. My first spouse was a mortician. I tell you what, people used to say, I bet that taught you a lot about death. No, doesn't teach you anything about death, because dead people don't talk. What it teaches you is about life. because you listen to all the people who say, if only, if only, I wish. So I learned that anybody at any age could be dead next week. And learning that in my 20s was pretty important in my life, because what I had to say to myself is, if I am not going to be here next week, how would I spend my time tonight? Would I spend my time trying to make the perfect birthday cake? No, I'd make a good enough birthday cake, and I'd spend the time with my kid. Or I would make a good enough birthday cake and I would get enough sleep that I'm not crabby tomorrow on the kid's birthday. How would I spend my weekend? Certainly not straightening the grass along the sidewalk, right? What's really important to me? What's really important to me? And does that show in my life? Does it show in my life? So you got to learn about yourself. What matters to you? I love this saying. If you were taken to court, right? Imagine somebody charged you with prioritizing what you say is the most important thing in your life. I used to say, my kids are the most important thing in my life. What if somebody said, I'm charging you with prioritizing your children? At one point, I realized there wouldn't be enough evidence to convict me. There wouldn't. Because I worked harder for A's at work than I worked for A's at home. And when I realized that, I made a change. And when they said at work, well, you're getting, the students say you're really good at this, but they say you're really disorganized. You got to work on that. I said, no, I don't. Right? Take those two things together. That's a C. That's good enough. Nope. And I thought that somehow I get in trouble. But what are they going to say? Because guess what? Everybody gets a C. Everybody's good at some things and not as good at other things. And I wanted my kids to know they mattered. I wanted my parents to know they mattered. I've talked a bit about staying healthy, but again, you got to eat right. You got to sleep. You got to exercise. You got to do the things that your body needs. And I'm going to close with this. What Henry Ford said. Whether you think you can make changes in your life to take better care, or whether you think you can't, you're right. Because some of you are going to say, I really could be eating better. All I would have to do is pick up orange juice every time I go to the store and pick up some vegetables every time I go to the store and just have some orange juice every day and snack on vegetables or fruits every day. And right there, I'm doing something better. I really could just say, when I'm making the kids do this physical thing, right, to get some energy out, well, I could be doing something physical too. If you think you can't make any changes, you won't. But if you think you can, then I urge you to make that list and try to do something different over the next year, starting today. Not starting after the pandemic's over, starting today. Something as simple as, I'm not going to fold underwear anymore. Something as simple as, I'm going to eat better. Something as simple as, I'm going to stop stressing about how my house looks. Something as simple as, I'm going to let go of thinking that my kids have to be able to do whatever. And I hope that in some small way, having come to this last session, having spent 5 sessions on taking really good care of your kids, that you will take this session as a suggestion that you need to take care of yourself. Thank you again for all you do as foster parents. You are such special people, but we need you to take care of yourselves. We want you to take care of yourselves. Thanks.
Okay, well, I don't know about you guys, but I have my list started, so I'm hoping you have one as well. I don't know if anyone has any questions or comments. I do know we are past the 8 o'clock hour, so if those of you who need to head off and attend to your little ones, or maybe even not so many little ones, maybe your big ones, right? You're welcome to do so. But Deb and I are here if you have any questions, thoughts that way. Certainly many, many good points for many of us to consider, right, as we move forward in our life. So not sure if anyone has any questions, thoughts. Deb, if you have anything else that you'd like to add in?
No, I don't think so. Just as you said, you know, well, now I forgot what you said. You said something at the beginning and it was so good and I was going to
that I've started my list. And I see some other people in the chat box said that they've started their list as well. So.
Yeah. So just everybody take care of yourselves. And, you know, things are going to be changing. I think that's what I was going to say is, you know, in North Dakota, there is going to be some differences. And so please just all take care of yourselves. So.
Indeed, indeed. You know, I have kind of a watermark here on our question mark in the sense of, you know, we can't pour from an empty cup. You know, I don't know why. I just love that saying in the sense of we can't provide for all those people that we love and we care for so much if we haven't taken care of ourselves. So, of course, make sure you're putting into practice many of the things Deb talked about tonight. So I don't know if we have any other questions or thoughts that way. I know I'm certainly thankful. Again, we had over 200 people joining us this evening. So very much appreciate all of you sharing your time with us. Many Thursdays in a row. There are a number of you who tuned in 6 weeks in a row. So I think that that's more than impressive and shows your commitment. So I'm hoping that this will bring it full circle so you can practice and implement many of the tools and skills we talked about over the last 6 weeks. And that today you put yourself a little bit on that to-do list, right? Make that time for yourself by all means. So yeah, and I do know we have had some comments come in the sense of asking about training credits. So again, those of you who tuned in for this live session, I will take that final attendee list and email that out to all licensing agencies. If you're in need of CEUs, as a foster parent, that you can obtain a certificate for if you'd like. Again, your licensing agency is going to have the list from myself, but you're welcome to complete the evaluation. There is a downloadable certificate in that. If you are looking for that social work CEU, I ask that you email me or comment in the chat box. So with that, I guess I don't think I have anything else other than I sincerely appreciate everyone sharing their time with us. I more than appreciate Deb jumping on this kind of crazy train with me to say, hey, let's plan a few weeks of training and see where it goes. And literally planning week to week how we're going to move forward. So certainly appreciate
you are getting lots of thank yous as well, Amy. So thank you again for all the hard work you did. You had a full-time job before this all started. And so you have done this like these foster parents. You are doing everything. You are working from home. You are doing distance learning with your children. You are putting in a whole lot of time. So thank you very, very much, Amy. So I think we'll just say goodbye to everyone. And yes, we will hope to see you in the future.
We will indeed, you know, and I know this is our last formal session together in kind of regards to this EmergenFC series, but as you kind of move forward and we move forward kind of within the next few weeks, next few months, the Children and Family Services Training Center would like to continue training. We look to continue kind of our regular, normal plan of kind of operating these online trainings in regards to kind of at least monthly, if not bi-monthly, that sort of thing. So if you have topics or other things that you're needing, I'm hoping you know how to reach us and find us. So with that, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for sharing your evening with us. I wish you well and take care. And, you know, as Deb has said over and over again, thanks for all you do. So showing up day and day for the kiddos in your care. So with that, I think we'll end. Take care, and I hope to see you sooner than later.
Right, sounds good. Bye-bye.